Saudi Arabia is already leading a coalition of Arab countries that have been conducting airstrikes against rebels in Yemen. Egyptian President on the other side, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who hosted the two-day Arab summit at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, the final session of the gathering, that the leaders had agreed in principle to form the Pan-Arab Force. He said a high-level committee would be formed to work out the details of implementing the force. We're discussing the Yemeni crisis and the war over there, also with a lot of political development in the region, including Egypt, and more topics with our very special guest, Professor Dr. Moataz Abdel Fattah, Professor of the Political Science at Cairo University and Central University. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much to have you on the show here today, Dr. Moataz Abdel Fattah. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So let's start at the beginning with the. You have been involved. If we step one step back, a lot of people saw Moataz Abdel Fattah as one of the activists during the 25th of January revolution. And then there has been a lot of disputes and arguments around the political phases of Egypt. So let me, before we jump into the Yemeni fate, the political roadmap, how much of satisfaction do you have today for the current political phase that we're living?
Hazy picture. One thing we know for sure is that we succeeded in not failing. In other words, in a region like ours, it's highly risky to conduct politics business without falling into the trap of losing control of where the country is going. I think what we had on June 30th was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from the fate that we all don't want to our country. One way of putting it, if you remember Tawfiq Hakim's famous two plays, one of them is Awdatul Ruh, the return of the soul, and the other one is the return of the consciousness. So I think Jan 25th was return of the soul. Like we took the future of our country in our hands. But we miscalculated lots of things. I wouldn't say the people, I would say the elite, the political elite, miscalculated a lot, took us into long routes that were absolutely unnecessary. But people got back to a point where they said, you know what, yes, we want to take it in our hands, we want to determine the fate of our country, but at the same time, we do not want it to go that way. The same way they got rid of Hosni Mubarak and his shilla, if you will, they got rid of Morsi, Kharat al-Shatir and their shilla. And now to a large extent we are in a fresh start. The challenges I see are monumental, but at the same time I see the will. I see this kind of trust that's extremely important between the great majority of the masses and the leadership. That's necessary, not sufficient, but necessary for any kind of progress or development.
When you say masses, you mean the people's opinion, or do you mean the political influentials? Because
no, I would say the people. I trust the people more than I trust political elites and so on. For me, I mean, I have a famous quote, or actually it was quoted a lot. If our elite, if we are lucky enough to send our elite, political elite to Israel, we would be extremely lucky. But unfortunately, we cannot do that.
But this is, I'm sorry, but this is a little bit opposite of what you're saying, because if the political influentials is not moving us with the track, people, it will be difficult for people to do that.
They are being forced to move into the right direction. If it's left, if it were left to them, most likely they would have created enough havoc to take us to the fate of Libya, possibly Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and so on.
Dr. Abdel Fattah, Dr. Moataz, you pointed out to a miscalculation in the elite. Could you please elaborate more about the miscalculation? How did they miscalculate? What happened?
Oh, so many. I can give you like tens of them.
Give me one of the
examples. Sure. No, like for instance, on like when we had this referendum on 1971 Constitution, this is the best piece, political piece of political document that we have had for the past 60 years or so. We had the chance to say yes or no. Who said yes? Those who said yes were Muslim Brotherhood and their affiliates. Yeah. Very interesting. In this exact constitution, there is Article 4, or there was Article 4 that said those who are playing with political Islam and so on cannot form political parties, which is absolutely against the interest of Muslim Brotherhood, Salafis, and everybody coming from this direction. And those were the people who said yes. And those who said no are exactly the opposite, seculars, the civilians, whatever you call them, and they chose to say no. You ask why? Why? Like, have a look at the presidential candidates for the elections. We ended up having 9 people representing the revolution. And you have one person representing Muslim Brotherhood and one person representing the old regime, and eventually the 9 people who were representing the revolution fought against each other. Eventually the ones who fought were the ones we didn't want any of them.
This was because there was no leadership for the revolution.
That's absolutely, actually, that's another point. For a revolution to succeed, you have to have 5 conditions. We got only the first one, but the other 4 are easier, much easier than the first one. But we did the most difficult step in a revolution.
So what are these?
Okay, the first one is to actually have those people in the streets, to have blocks of people.
Opinion, yeah, the same opinion.
People who are going out won't change. To convince people to leave their sofas, their bedrooms, their living rooms, and go out in the street shouting, won't change. This is the most difficult one. Then you have other 4. You have to have a leadership. You have to have some kind of organization of some sort. You have to have cadres. You have to have program of change. We got the first one, the most difficult one, and we failed miserably on the other 4. So eventually we end up saying the revolution did not achieve all its goals. Of course it didn't achieve all of its goals. You guys don't know. You don't have what it takes. You see, and when you say that, or like when I used to say that, I've been criticized. Okay, criticized for what? I'm telling you what you need to do. But you didn't know we are going to do it. One time I remember one of the famous figures, he was very harsh on me. Because I said you have to have some kind of unified leadership, not necessarily one person, a group of people, 5, 6, 7, any number of people. And he said we have like million leaders of the revolution. I said there is no such a thing as million leaders of the revolution.
That was a shortfall. It was not a good point in the favor of the revolution, definitely. But Dr. Moataz, you were sponsoring freedom at that time of the revolution, and you're knowledgeable. We want to use your expertise in this. You know that revolutions are usually triggered by a group of people. Well, that's a picture that we have for you from our team that we'd like to give to you.
By one of our
very
colleagues
thoughtful
here
of you.
in Moataz.
Interesting. Wow.
And she drew it especially for
that's me.
when she knew that you're coming on our show today. So
Hope it's close. It's
Sure.
drawn by one of our colleagues, Abdel.
So thanks, Abir, very much. Very interesting.
Dr. Moataz, did you like the picture?
Oh, sure, very much so. I'm
And
going to
her
use it
name is Abir El-Fishawi, and she drew
as
this
my
for you
Facebook
especially.
profile picture.
Dr. Moataz, we want to move on now to a very important event that took place in Egypt, which is the Arab Summit. And the Arab Summit was, after years of division, the formation of an Arab unit force appears to be common ground with bringing Arab states together, and the decision of military force is seen by many as the most important achievement of the Arab Summit. What is your insight about this?
What's important having this kind of Arab force is that Arabs finally got the message. These are not 5 or 6 different movies played independently in each one of these countries. No, it is one movie directed by one director or a group of directors, and we have different scenes in different Arab countries. And otherwise, we are all in the same boat. And somebody's trying to determine our fate from abroad, and we have either to accept that or to reject that. And apparently, we rejected that, and we are going to act accordingly. Acting accordingly here means that we are going to get involved as Arabs, not as Egypt alone, or Libya alone, or Syria alone, or Saudi Arabia alone. No, as Arabs, we are going to defend our right to self-determination. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to be part of somebody's plan. And apparently, in this Arab Summit, we stood up to say, no, we do not want to be part of anybody's plan. We want to have our own plan, starting with Yemen. And talking about a resolution coming from the Arab Summit, this means about having a unified Arab force. This doesn't mean that you are solving one particular problem or crisis in Yemen. No, you have a tendency, or you have the will, to eventually intervene in similar cases to bring peace and stability to these countries. Because without some thing, Saudi Arabia is already there. Yemen, in Yemen, United Arab Emirates is already there. Egypt is already there. But somehow to legitimize it, in such a resolution coming from the Arab Summit, you are saying we are ready to go beyond Yemen. We are ready possibly to go to Somalia. We are ready to go to Libya. We are ready to go to Syria, and so on.
And perhaps the Palestinian cause as well?
Sure, yes, actually, there's another important development that happened in the Palestinian cause. One thing I'd like to mention, there was an Arabist, his name is Fattah al-Husari. He was once asked, how come that Israel would defeat 10 Arab countries? He said, because they were 10. Had they been one, they would have defeated Israel. In other words, because we are so diverse, we are so scattered, we are so disunited, we are so dismembered, we end up being faced with one country that is capable of one by one.
Dr. Moataz, did the West, like the United States and Europe, get the message that the Arabs are now together and making a coalition and that they're going to continue being together?
They definitely see something different. However, we have a tendency in Arabs to talk, but not walking the talk. We are good at linguistics. We can raise slogans, we can...
You mean they don't follow up?
Yes, they don't follow up. They don't execute. You see, they plan. Sometimes even we don't plan. But if they plan, they might not eventually execute. So now they are witnessing something new. They don't, it's a matter of wait and see on their part. But for sure, had we had this United Arab Force earlier, Libya wouldn't have been Libya we have today. Syria wouldn't have been Syria that we have today. Maybe even Iraq wouldn't have been Iraq then. But one thing to keep in mind as well, when we talk about military intervention, when you talk about United Arab Force, it does not come only from the military or security point of view. It has as well its political side. For instance, when the NATO intervened in Bosnia and Herzegovina in early 90s, it looked like military intervention only. But no, you cannot keep intervening military forever. You have to cut and at the same time come up with a political plan that is sustainable political plan that would eventually make sure that you would not need to intervene again militarily. That's exactly what we need in Yemen or Libya or Syria or Iraq and so on. You don't intervene forever. You see, you don't. It's an open heart surgeon that's going to last for 5 years. There's no such a thing. It should be limited by the number of...
You think that there was a delay in that aspect from the Arab side to tackle this issue?
Sure. I mean, for Yemen, that's for sure. But if you look at the region in general, yes, you can even, we are more sure that we should have intervened earlier. Actually, we should have intervened by... I mean, had Saddam or had Bashar or had Mubarak or had Gaddafi or any of these people, had they been in an actual, factual process of political reform, we wouldn't have been what we have today. Reform is not easy, but at the same time, it is not a luxury. It should be a process that's happening, and people should